September 18, 1944. In the dense forests of Lorraine, France, General Otto von Manchevel, commander of the German 5th Panzer Army, reviewed his latest intelligence reports in a makeshift command post near the border. At 47 years old, Manchevel was one of the Wehrmacht's most capable armored commanders, a veteran of the Eastern Front whose tactical acumen had earned him rapid promotions. He had only assumed command of the 5th Panzer Army weeks earlier, inheriting a force battered by the Allied breakout from Normandy. Yet, on this overcast autumn day, he saw an opportunity to strike back. 4 months, German armies had been retreating under relentless pressure, but now, with fresh reinforcements, Manchevel believed he could blunt the advance of General George S. Patton's aggressive U.S. Third Army. The key to his plan lay with two newly formed panzer brigades, the 111th and 113th, equipped with dozens of brand-new Panther tanks rushed from factories to the front. These Mark V Panthers represented the height of German tank design, 45-ton behemoths with thick, sloped frontal armor up to 80 mm effective, superior optics, and a high-velocity 75 mm gun that could destroy American tanks at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The 113th Panzer Brigade alone fielded around 42 Panthers, supported by Panzer IVs and mechanized infantry. Manchevel's objective was ambitious but straightforward: launch a coordinated counterattack to recapture Lunéville, eliminate the American bridgehead over the Moselle River, and force Patton's overextended forces to halt their dash toward the Rhine. Patton's supply lines were stretched thin after a lightning advance across France, his tanks dispersed, and fuel shortages looming. A concentrated panzer thrust, Manchevel calculated, could exploit these vulnerabilities and turn the tide in Lorraine. By traditional blitzkrieg logic, this should have been a winning proposition. The Panthers outclassed the American M4 Sherman in firepower and protection. The Sherman's 75 mm gun struggled against the Panthers' front at long range, while its armor was vulnerable in return. Surprise was on the German side. American intelligence had little warning of these fresh formations assembling in the foggy woodlands. Fuel was rationed, but sufficient for a short, decisive operation. Manchevel planned to commit his brigades piecemeal, but with overwhelming local superiority, slicing into the exposed flank of the U.S. 4th Armored Division. But 1944 was not 1940. The nature of armored warfare had shifted dramatically. Superior tanks alone no longer guaranteed victory. Outcomes now hinged on integrated tactics, rapid communication, air support, artillery coordination, and, above all, logistics. Factors the strained German war machine could no longer match against the industrial might of the Allies. Dawn on September 19 brought thick fog rolling across the rolling fields and hedgerows around the small town of Arracourt. Visibility plummeted to mere dozens of yards. The 113th Panzer Brigade advanced cautiously from assembly areas, engines rumbling as columns of Panthers and supporting Panzergrenadiers pushed westward. Commanders peered through mist-shrouded periscopes, expecting to overwhelm thin American outposts and break into open terrain for a classic armored exploitation. Instead, the attack unraveled almost immediately. The fog neutralized the Panthers' greatest asset, its long-range gun. What should have been engagements at 1,000 to 2,000 meters turned into brutal close-quarters fights at under 200 meters. The lead German tanks suddenly erupted in flames, hit from concealed flanks. Turrets traversed frantically, but no targets appeared in the gray haze. Radio chatter exploded in confusion. Contacts left, right, everywhere and nowhere. The Americans weren't fielding heavier tanks, they were using speed and cunning. At the heart of the defense was Combat Command A, CCA, of the 4th Armored Division, under the steady leadership of Colonel Bruce C. Clark. His forces included the 37th Tank Battalion, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, a bold officer whose aggressive style would one day inspire the naming of America's future main battle tank after him. Supporting them were elements of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with the M18 Hellcat. The Hellcat looked inadequate on paper, just 17 tons, with armor so thin a heavy machine gun could penetrate it, and an open turret exposing the crew to shrapnel and small arms. German doctrine dismissed such designs as reckless. But the M18's secret weapon was mobility. Powered by a 400 horsepower aircraft engine, it could reach speeds of nearly 60 miles per hour, faster than any tank in the world. Its power-to-weight ratio allowed it to dart across terrain, reposition in seconds, and strike from unexpected angles. In the fog, this turned the tables. Rigid German columns advanced in formation for mutual support, but the mist shattered coordination. Hellcat platoons operated like hunters. Using radio nets for real-time updates, they raced to flanking positions behind hedgerows or farm buildings. Crews waited silently until Panthers lumbered past, sides exposed. Then, rapid volleys from the Hellcat's potent 76mm gun, capable of penetrating Panther side armor at close range, tore into the vulnerable flanks. Ammunition cooked off, turrets blew outward in secondary explosions. Before survivors could react, the Hellcats reversed at full throttle, vanishing into the fog to set up the next ambush. This hit-and-fade tactic repeated throughout the morning. Shermans from Abrams' battalion joined in, using the fog to close distances and target weak points. German crews, many inexperienced in these new brigades, panicked as unseen enemies struck and disappeared. One Hellcat platoon alone accounted for multiple kills before relocating unscathed. By midday, as the fog began to lift, the Germans faced a second devastating blow: American artillery. The 4th Armored's Field Artillery Battalions, augmented by corps assets, mastered a revolutionary technique called time on target, TOT. Traditional barrages fired sequentially, giving enemies time to dive for cover after the first shells arrived. TOT changed that through precise mathematics. Fire direction centers calculated flight times for shells from batteries scattered miles apart, adjusting firing sequences so every round, from 105mm howitzers to heavier 155s, impacted simultaneously. Tiny Piper Cub observation planes, piloted by daring artillery spotters, circled above the thinning mist, radioing exact coordinates of German concentrations. No warning shots, no adjustment rounds, just sudden, apocalyptic fury. Dozens of shells detonated in unison over Panzer Grenadier positions, airbursts shredding exposed infantry with shrapnel rain. Antennas snapped, external gear destroyed, command links severed. Panthers, unharmed by the blasts themselves, lost their vital infantry screens, protection against close assaults, and became isolated, blind hulks. Without infantry support, tanks were vulnerable to bazooka teams and further Hellcat ambushes. Coordination collapsed. Isolated Panthers buttoned up, hatches sealed, unable to spot threats. The pattern continued over the following days as Manchufel fed in the 111th Panzer Brigade and elements of the depleted 11th Panzer Division. Attacks became disjointed, hampered by poor reconnaissance, inexperienced crews, and constant harassment. When skies cleared, P-47 Thunderbolts from the 19 Tactical Air Command swooped in, rockets and bombs claiming dozens more vehicles. Fuel shortages crippled German mobility, tanks abandoned for lack of gasoline, while American supply lines, though strained by the Red Ball Express truck convoys, kept units operational. Damaged Shermans and Hellcats were towed to field depots, repaired rapidly with spare parts flowing from distant factories. German recovery was negligible, a thrown track or breakdown meant abandonment. By the battle's end on September 29, the German counteroffensive had collapsed. Across the engagements around Arracourt, 5th Panzer Army forces, starting with over 260 tanks and assault guns, suffered catastrophic losses. Around 86 destroyed and over 100 damaged or broken down from mechanical issues and fuel starvation. Only a fraction remained operational. The fresh Panzer brigades were effectively shattered. In contrast, CCA of the 4th Armored Division lost approximately 25 Shermans and 7 Hellcats, losses quickly replaced by America's vast production pipeline. The Hellcats of the 704th alone claimed dozens of German tanks for minimal losses, proving speed and tactics could overcome superior armor. Manchufel later reflected that American artillery coordination, air power, and mobile defense rendered traditional panzer assaults obsolete. Arracourt wasn't decided by individual tank duels but by systems, communication, logistics, combined arms. The Germans fought with courage and technical excellence in isolated machines. The Americans waged war as an integrated, industrial force, replaceable vehicles, abundant fuel, overwhelming support. This overlooked clash in the muddy fields of Lorraine revealed a profound truth about why the Allies prevailed. Wars are won not just on battlefields, but in factories, supply chains, and doctrinal innovation. Superior weapons matter little without the ecosystem to sustain them. The fog of Arracourt lifted to expose the fading strength of the Third Reich's armored might. Patton's advance resumed, the road to the Rhine open once more. As the days wore on, the German assaults grew increasingly desperate. Manchoufel committed the 111th Panzer Brigade and remnants of the battle-worn 11th Panzer Division, feeding them into piecemeal attacks that lacked coordination. Inexperienced crews in their gleaming new Panthers struggled with basic maneuvers, while fuel shortages forced commanders to ration every kilometer. Tanks bogged down in the muddy fields or simply ran dry, abandoned where they stood, crews spiking guns and retreating on foot. American forces, by contrast, operated with fluid precision. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, commanding the 37th Tank Battalion, exemplified this aggressive style. Known for leading from the front in his personally named Sherman Thunderbolt, Abrams orchestrated daring counter-thrusts. His Shermans and Hellcats exploited every opening, using hedgerows for cover and radio networks for instant coordination. When German columns probed forward, American units would fall back deliberately, drawing them into kill zones before striking from multiple directions. When the skies finally cleared in late September, the third element of the American system unleashed its full fury: air power. P-47 Thunderbolts from the 19 Tactical Air Command roared overhead, diving through flak to strafe and bomb exposed German formations. Armed with rockets, bombs, and .50 caliber machine guns, these jugs turned armored columns into infernos. Pilots like the legendary Bazooka Charlie Carpenter even modified lightweight Piper Cub spotters with bazookas, personally diving on Panthers to score direct hits. The combination proved devastating. German recovery efforts were non-existent. A damaged Panther was often irretrievable, its complex transmission or final drive beyond field repair under fire. American mechanics, however, worked miracles in forward depots. Using cranes and recovery vehicles, they towed knocked-out Shermans and Hellcats back, patching hulls, swapping engines, and returning them to battle within days. Spare parts flowed steadily via the Red Ball Express truck convoys, turning temporary losses into mere inconveniences. By September 29, the German counteroffensive had sputtered to a halt. The 5th Panzer Army's ambitious drive ended in ruin. Starting with over 260 tanks and assault guns across the engaged units, the Germans saw 86 destroyed outright and more than 100 damaged or abandoned due to mechanical failure and fuel exhaustion. The once proud Panzer brigades were reduced to shadows, their fresh Panthers scattered as smoking wrecks across the Lorraine countryside. Combat Command A, bearing the brunt of the fury, lost just 25 Shermans and 7 Hellcats, figures rapidly offset by replacements rolling off American assembly lines. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion's Hellcats alone claimed dozens of Panthers, often at ranges where their speed allowed them to dictate the terms of engagement. Manchoufel, a pragmatic commander who survived the war, later acknowledged the futility. In his post-war writings, he noted how American mobility, devastating artillery, and air superiority had rendered classic Panzer tactics obsolete. The fog that blinded German gunners on the first day symbolized a broader blindness, an inability to adapt to a war won by systems, not just superior machines. Arracourt stands as one of the most lopsided tank battles of the Western Front, yet it remains overshadowed by Normandy and the Bulge. Its lessons, however, are profound. Courage was abundant on both sides. German crews fought tenaciously despite the odds. But victory belonged to the side with superior integration. Radios linking units in real time, artillery firing in perfect synchronization, air forces dominating the battlefield, and an industrial base that replaced losses almost as quickly as they occurred. The Germans crafted exquisite weapons of war, knights in steel armor charging with precision engineering. The Americans built an unstoppable machine, a factory on tracks, supported by wings and thunder from afar. In the rolling fields and persistent mists of Lorraine, that machine prevailed decisively. Patton's Third Army soon resumed its advance, the path to Germany cleared once more. Arracourt wasn't just a defeat for the Panzers, it was a glimpse into the future of warfare, where logistics, coordination and adaptability trumped raw technological edge. The muddy ground around Arracourt still holds the echoes of that clash, rusted tracks, shattered turrets, and the ghosts of young men on both sides. It reminds us that wars are decided not solely by the bravery of soldiers or the power of their tanks, but by the strength of the nation behind them. This forgotten battle in September 1944 revealed why the Allies ultimately triumphed. Not through invincible tanks, but through an overwhelming system of war that no amount of individual excellence could overcome. The Panther was a marvel, the Hellcat a gamble, but the American way of war turned the gamble into dominance.